We are getting lots of new information now that Nicholas Maduro has been captured and extracted from Venezuela about manipulating elections in Venezuela, around the world, and right here in the United States of America. DNI Tulsi Gabbard has already confirmed it. President Trump said to be on the lookout for additional information about how they were manipulating and rigging elections. To help me go through all of this, I have Ralph Pezzullo. Ralph, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here.
So just some background for my audience. Ralph is a New York Times bestselling author. He's written about SEAL Team 6, Osama Bin Laden, cartels. He's also got a book out, Stolen Elections, the Takedown of Democracy Worldwide. I want to talk about the election manipulation. I think more and more of us agree that something was definitely off in 2020. I started covering the Venezuela story in August, before there was any military buildup, before we went in and extracted Maduro, in something that will probably be a future book for you. But where do we stand right now as far as any information that you have? President Trump is more and more talking about the election stuff. I've been talking with retired military people that have told me about several investigations that are just waiting for permission and funding to greenlight them. Where do you stand with this whole Maduro extraction and exposing the election manipulation?
Okay, so the Trump administration has all of the evidence that the whistleblowers have put together about the mechanism whereby the Venezuelan software was sort of inserted into our election system and controls our elections, and has since 2008. And how the Chinese, the Iranians, the Russians, and the Cubans, this sort of criminal cartel, supports that. Now, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, just referred to it today in his hearings before the Congress. I'm not sure that any members of Congress or press people picked up on it, but this is very key, because what the whistleblowers found out and what the Trump administration knows is that there was a criminal cartel of our enemies that has been trying to undermine us for 18 years. And one of the mechanisms that they used to do that, and probably the most important one, we hear about the drug dealing, but probably the most important one was the election software that was developed by Venezuelan engineers, perfected by Chinese and Persian and Iranian engineers, and is now present in our election system in the United States. And our elections are basically run with Venezuelan software and put into election machines that are made in China, where the parts are made in China. So they're made in China. The parts are sent to Taiwan. The machines are assembled in Taiwan, and they slap on a made in Taiwan label on them, and then they come to the United States. And that's what we have been conducting our elections on. Chinese-made machines with Venezuelan software that was designed to steal and manipulate the results of elections. So this is a big fundamental problem. The President Trump, is aware of it. The FBI is aware. They have investigated. They've looked through all the information that we turned over to them, and they've confirmed everything. And the other person who confirmed it is Chavez's former intelligence chief, Hugo Carvajal, who is currently in prison in New York. He claimed that he had a monitor linked to Smartmatic, one of the election companies, on his desk in Caracas, and he could watch the steal taking place in real time of our presidential elections. So this is all common knowledge. The mainstream press has not picked up on it yet, but President Trump and other officials, you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, have been hinting more recently about how this is going to come out, and how they're going to make an announcement certainly before the midterm election, so that the system, the corrupt system, is taken down and replaced with something like paper ballots with confirmed with IDs. And we're all waiting for that announcement. Now, the takedown of Maduro was definitely related to this, but the problem now is that the Cartel del Soles, which is sort of the criminal cartel that is part of the Maduro Chavez regime, is still in place. So basically, the Cartel del Soles was established by Hugo Chavez. It's basically a regime that supports drug dealing, that is involved in drug dealing, and they control all drug dealing in the Western Hemisphere, and most of the drug dealing to Europe and the Middle East. They are the biggest criminal cartel in the world right now, and probably that ever existed, because all the generals in Venezuela, they call it the Cartel del Soles, because the generals in Venezuela, instead of having stars on their epaulets, have suns, soles, on their epaulet. And so basically the whole government apparatus of Venezuela is involved, is part of this cartel. And they make somewhere between, $1 and $3 trillion a year in profits from drug dealing. But the Mexican cartels, the Sinaloa cartels, and so on, they work for them. They're their distributors. They are likened to sort of the Costco of drug dealing. So they control all of the growing fields in Bolivia and Peru, the labs in Colombia where they make the cocaine, and the distribution network. This criminal cartel is still in place, even though Nicholas Maduro is gone, and his wife, they're both in custody in New York City. The criminal cartel is still in place, and Delcy Rodriguez, who is the acting president of Venezuela, and her brother Jorge Rodriguez, who is the head of the National Assembly, they are leading figures in the Cartel del Soles. They are avowed Marxists. Their father was the head of the Venezuelan Communist Party. He was also a terrorist. Their stepfather was Carlos the Jackal, who is a famous terrorist from the 70s, probably the most famous terrorist from the 70s. So the United States has taken out the head of the cartel, but the head of the cartel is just being replaced with Delcy Rodriguez. We have already, Secretary of State Marco Rubio already came out today and said, there's no more military action in Venezuela by the United States. Well, what does that mean? How are you going to take out the Cartel del Soles, which is really the force behind all this, unless you go in there and root them out? I mean, you're talking about probably at least, 10, 20,000 people, military leaders, the whole country is based on this cartel. So, we can fix the election system here in the United States. The president can come out and announce that the election, that there is strong evidence. They have all the evidence of the election fraud since 2008. I mean, they started stealing elections. It was in 2008. It was the Democratic primary in Cook County, Illinois. And we have the whistleblowers that I work with. They have recruited the engineers from these companies, Smartmatic, Dominion, the Consejo Nacional Electoral in Venezuela, which owns the source code of all of this election software. They have recruited the engineers who stole elections, who worked in these companies, who helped create the software and change it over the years, and who wrote the source code. So we have all the evidence. The question is, what does the administration do with the evidence now? And what do they do about Venezuela? And from what I hear, what I hear through the whistleblowers and others, is that there's a very big debate within the administration. I think the president wants to expose all this, and there are people within his administration who are complicit in one way or another, because this cartel, the Venezuelans and the Chinese and the other countries that supported them, they had tremendous resources. They bought off a lot of election officials in different districts in the United States to get their machines in there and the companies in there to run their elections. They paid off judges. Another curious thing is that when Elon Musk and Doge started looking at the federal budget, one of the areas that they concentrated on was the USAID, which is our the agency that distributes foreign aid to countries in need. One of the things that they found there was something called the Consortium of Elections and Political Process Strengthening. It's called CEPS. And what it turned out to be was basically the marketing apparatus of these companies, Smartmatic and Dominion. So the American taxpayer, to the tune of billions of dollars, was giving grants through CEPS, through USAID, to these organizations to spread this software across the globe, and they were doing it through U.S. embassies. So we have evidence that officials in U.S. embassies were tasked with pressuring officials in countries like Guatemala and Georgia and so on and so forth to adapt this software. And so the question is, who within the U.S. government was behind this? We suspect it was our intelligence service, and we suspect that there was a lot of collusion and collaboration within our intelligence service, and those are the same people who are pressuring Trump not to release this information.
Interesting. Okay. Listen to this. This is just out this morning. Okay. This is Senator Tommy Tuberville, who's not really talked about the election stuff. He brings up that he's been briefed on exactly what you talk about. Let me show that to you in the audience.
Okay. President Trump's been posting a lot about Venezuelan election theft technology after black bagging Nicholas Maduro. Do you think that he's going to sing like a canary? Do you think that he's the man who knows where all the bodies are buried when it comes to this topic?
I don't think there's any doubt, that now this didn't start under Maduro. It started under Hugo Chavez, the president before that, because he got recalled in an election, and he came up with this system of machines that he was able to put out within his country and got himself elected. And then when that happened, he said, heck, we'll just do this internationally. So they started selling them all over the world. And that's how we ended up with them here. And now they're all controlled by, a tech group in Venezuela. But I would hope that he would be singing, as you said, like a canary and telling people what's really going on. I would think that this is a lot of why President Trump went in there, because he knows the world cannot survive with crooks running the voting systems, not just in our country, but all over the world. And we cannot allow these machines to continue on. We have to have paper ballots, one-day voting, and everybody has to show up with an ID. If we don't do that, it's going to be over. We cannot survive like this. And again, to get this passed, what do we need to do? It's passed in the House. We're going to have to bust a filibuster. We're going to have to bust a filibuster, and then we're going to have to get some of these rhinos to vote with us. I don't know whether we get 51, even if we bust a filibuster and actually do something for the country. I hate to say that, but I've seen things work up here for 6 years, and we've got a lot of people that just do not believe in President Trump. They don't like him, and they want him gone, and they feel like this is a way they can get rid of him.
All right. So here's one of the top Republican senators saying, listen, I'm being briefed on this. I know what's going on. Unfortunately, even within the Republican Party, if we got rid of the filibuster, I don't know that we even have 51 that would vote for the SAVE Act or vote to expose this to the world. that's a little bit disheartening, but good information nonetheless.
It is good information. The information that's in my book, and I urge people to read it, not just because I wrote it, but because it's based on a 5-year investigation conducted by 2 top government whistleblowers. And it reveals this whole system and how it was constructed and how it works. And a lot of members, a lot of people in the White House and a lot of members of Congress have read the book. And this information, the American people need to see the evidence. The evidence is in the book. It's been corroborated by FBI investigations, Justice Department investigations. So it's real, and it's not really, what I want to impress on people is that this is not about political party, our political parties. It's an attack on our political system from foreign enemies. They did this as part of what they call hybrid warfare, one of the tactics in hybrid warfare, to undermine our country and specifically our democratic processes in our country, which is the strength of our system and always has been. They used, and this is, we're talking about Cuba, China, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. And it's interesting that all these countries are sort of being targeted by the Trump administration right now. This is so he is aware of all this and he's acting on it. The American people have to catch up, and I hope that President Trump and his officials come out with all this evidence and present it to the American people to prove to them that this is not a partisan issue. It's an attack on the United States. And this hybrid warfare, one of the tenets of it is the election software that they have developed. And is the software that we use to run our elections in our country, and now runs the elections in 73 other countries around the world. And unfortunately, the ugly part is that it looks as though some serious people within our intelligence community were collaborating with the criminals. They saw this as a way to, for them to control elections in other countries as well, and in the United States. And hybrid warfare, I should also point out that this is just sort of one of the tenets of hybrid warfare. The other one, of course, is the drug dealing, the massive drug dealing that they've done, massive amount of drugs that they import into our country, including fentanyl, which the president has continually told the Chinese leadership to stop doing, and they have vowed to stop doing, but they haven't stopped. They even though fentanyl is illegal in China, they send the precursor chemicals to Mexico, and the Mexican cartels mix them up and produce the fentanyl pills, which are extremely inexpensive, and they are shipped across the border, mainly in Ciudad Juarez, in trucks and cars. And another part of it are these terrorist groups, or these sort of criminal groups that came across the border when it was open, and they include Tren de la Aragua, which is a group of Venezuelans that are trained. They're former, mainly a lot of them were criminals who were in prison, and they were put through a course of learning disruptive techniques and sent into our country to deal drugs, to disrupt communities, to commit crime. And the Chinese did the same. All of this is not so a lot. And then the other part of it is, with the tremendous amount of money that they have funded a lot of these groups, Black Lives Matter, the trans movement, Antifa, groups like that, through NGOs, often using George Soros's Open Society Foundations as a conduit. So a lot of these movements that we see in our country that are disruptive, they're not organic. They are funded overseas, and they are here to disrupt our country. And we see the disruption and we think, oh my God, our country's falling apart and we're at war with one another. And this isn't exactly true. And unfortunately, our mainstream media has completely failed. They've failed to address these issues. They've failed to do the investigative journalists which is their job. And they completely ignore, that they report on the effects of these things, but they never look behind the surface.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna said earlier today that they've been able to trace money back to Neville Singh, who's in China, a billionaire. He was funding a lot of the riots that we were seeing up in Minnesota just in the last 10 days. Ralph, let me show you in the audience something else that just came out today about one way that elections are rigged. Let me show you that, and then we'll talk about it. This is Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch.
We received word from Oregon that after a Judicial Watch lawsuit was filed to clean up the rolls in Oregon, they removed 800,000 names, or about to remove 800,000 names. At least 160,000 will be removed immediately, with the rest to be removed at a future time. And all of this resulted, obviously, from our federal lawsuit to clean up the rolls. So that means our prior litigation and legal actions that caused the removal of 5 million names, dirty names from the rolls, is now nearly, those numbers are now up to nearly 6 million names from the rolls, 5.8 million to be specific.
All right. So that was put out just today. Is this one of the ways that they manipulate elections? Is that like literally 800,000 names that should not be on the voter rolls in Oregon? He said another 5 million in a couple of different states. Each one of those names triggers a ballot. Right. And then those ballots come back and they go, well, it matches the names out there. But then we find out a lot of those names are either fabricated or dead, or they've moved, or it's a duplicate or a triplicate. Is this one of the ways in which they're manipulating our elections?
Absolutely. So when these Venezuelan run companies like Smartmatic, Dominion, and others, when they get the contract to run the election in a particular election district, we have something like 300 election districts in our country. They know the ones that are key through their analysis to a presidential election or a senatorial election. These are very sophisticated people with hundreds of engineers who are involved in this. When they get the contract to run an election in a particular district, Stephen, they get control of what's called the poll book. Now, the poll book has it's like the intelligence, right? They have the names of all the people in that district who voted, once every 20 years, who vote every time. They have the names of the people who vote Republican, who vote Democratic, and they know who has died in between elections, but is still on the rolls. And they were able to use this information to help create a plan to steal an election. And they can, and also in certain states where when an immigrant comes over the border, they are given a driver's license. Like in California, you are awarded a driver's license. Well, once you have a driver's license, you're on the voter rolls in that state. Then somebody else can often it's not even the person who came across, but they have their name and they use that to fill out a mail-in ballot for that individual. They check the ballot against the voter rolls and they see that this person is on the rolls because he has a driver's license, and that passes muster as a ballot, a legitimate ballot in a state like California. So they have 14, the engineers have told us that the engineers that have been recruited from the criminal cartel, they have told us they have 14 different ways in order to steal an election in a particular district. They can either do it through the EMS servers, which are connected to big servers in Belgrade, Serbia, that are run by the Chinese, Huawei servers. They can do it by getting people to vote who are dead, creating voters in that district by just entering their names on the log. They control the whole system. Now, how we allowed this to happen is a story that we're going to have to investigate. But there's been a lot of corruption and collusion, even on the local level. And judges, as so many brave people in this country have found, who have tried to investigate this, they've been blocked, they've been thrown in jail, they've been harassed. I mean, we have seen the essence of our democracy, our election system, taken over and run by foreign actors who are our enemies. And that should not be. And that should not be a political issue.
Yeah. Let me show you in the audience this. I thought this was really interesting. So Patrick Byrne, former CEO of Overstock, turns out he's basically was a CIA asset under Barack Obama. He's been really the one behind gathering information, putting up money to get this information. He's been feeding information to Trump about Maduro and others, but he's in the middle of a lawsuit right now with Eric Comer and Dominion Voting Systems. I thought this was really interesting. He said, Comer and his lawyers were overheard in the lobby agreeing that they needed to get out of this any way they can. Comer's attorney just bumped into my lawyer, Peter Tickton, trying to get into a fist fight. So Peter Tickton is one of President Trump's former attorneys, a good friend. He's working on getting Tina Peters removed from jail after she exposed the election fraud in Colorado. But this is really interesting. Now, I'm deposing Eric Comer today. Last week, he and his lawyers asked the judge to limit me asking about Venezuela, China, and Iran. Last night, the judge sided with us. Eric's trying to cancel the depositions now. He's desperately trying to get out of his deposition. So pretty interesting. Like, their lawyers immediately, you cannot talk about Venezuela. You cannot talk about Iran. You cannot talk about China. Yeah. And luckily the judge said so. There's going to be information that comes out about that. But then how about Eric Comer's lawyer, like, shouldering an 80-year-old attorney representing Patrick Byrne? And now they're trying to get this whole lawsuit to go away. They brought the lawsuit and trying to get out of it. Your thoughts on that information?
Yeah, no, it's stunning. And another point that's really interesting is that Dominion it doesn't exist anymore. They sold their assets. I think it was in October or November to Victory Voting, another company. Now, I know that the Justice Department is investigating, that transaction right now, because why would a billion-dollar company like Dominion suddenly just sell off their assets to a smaller company? What the hell is going on? But the Venezuelans and the Chinese and this criminal cartel, they are expert in playing this game of this corporate shell game, where they change the name of companies, all of it to hide the fact that the source code, the software that steals elections, is made in Venezuela and is kept in a vault in the bank in Caracas. Right now, we have a copy of that, so we can go to. They're afraid to take us to court because we can prove that this is all a complete con on the American people, and they're trying to con these judges. And God bless Patrick Byrne. I'm pretty sure he'll win his case, but these people will stop at nothing. And they, unfortunately, a lot of law firms and influencers in our country take the money and they collaborate. Maybe they don't even understand who they're working for or who their money is coming from, but they're collaborating with the enemy.
Okay. All right. Final question. So we now have this top general, Hugo Caraval from Venezuela. He's in jail. Mm-hmm. He's saying, listen, this is great risk to my life, but I am willing to share with President Trump and the American people exactly how we were using intelligence to steal elections.
Yes.
We also now have Nicholas Maduro in jail. Where do you see this going just in our final minutes? Because I know President Trump wants to get this out. Tulsi Gabbard wants to get this out, but it seems like there's a lot more people in DC that would love to either ignore this or completely block it from coming out because they might be implicated.
That's the problem. That's exactly the issue right now, Stephen. Hugo Carvajal is an example. He was in the Justice Department when Trump was elected. They wanted to convict him of drug trafficking, and they didn't want to interview him. The two whistleblowers, Gary Bernson and Martine Rodil, had to go to the Trump administration and shame them and say, hey, we need to get in and talk to this guy first. Before you convict him of drug trafficking, let's get in there and hear what he has to say about what was going on with the election fraud system and other things that the Maduro regime was doing. They interviewed him, and he had intelligence on unbelievable things that were going on that had military things that were threats to the United States, presented them to the president. The president was like absolutely shocked. But it's another example of how the evidence is all around. The evidence has been found. It has been certified, right? It's in my book. And a lot of people want to ignore it because they want to preserve the criminal system that's in place and that they're making money off of.
Yeah. I think just one final thing I would say, just because you don't see something publicly being talked about doesn't mean it's not. Look at Senator Tommy Tuberville. This guy's never talked about this. Suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, this guy knows a lot about this. President Trump is talking about it, but a lot gets done behind the scenes. Look at this magnificent mission they did in blowing up the nuclear sites of Iran. Nobody saw it coming until the bombs dropped. Right. Look at what they did capturing Maduro. Nobody knew until those helicopter lights went on, and 3 minutes later, he's captured by the Delta Force, and he's on his way back to New York City. So I'm going to put a link to the book, Stolen Elections. You've gone through all of this information, the whistleblowers, everything. You've laid it out in a really nice way. So I'll put a link to that. But if people want to follow you online, Ralph, where can I point them?
You can go to my website, ralphpezzulloauthor.com. I also have a podcast called Heroes Behind Headlines that comes out every week and talks about, a lot of CIA military heroes that we don't know about who are still alive. And you can find me on X. You can find me on all those social media outlets. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much for taking time. I'll put those links down below. We'll have you on again in the future.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for what you're doing. Extremely important. We need a strong press in our country, and unfortunately, the one that existed before has been corrupted and is not serving the American people. But people like you are. God bless.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay.